and I'm happy to say that he's a friend. He's like a father to me, and he's also a church member of mine. Mr. Otis Dismuke, he served as facilitator for the Family Involvement Program in the Birmingham City Schools, where he works to increase the involvement of parents in our schools. He is a member of St. James Missionary Baptist Church, where he is the chairman of Deacons, Sunday School teacher, Scholarship Committee, and the Men's Usher Board. Mr. Dismuke is active in the community in the following areas. He holds several positions: board member of the Birmingham Museum of Art, board member of Davenport Harris Funeral Home, Association of the Study of Afro Life and History, 100 Black Men of Birmingham, Boy Scouts of America, and the Distinguished Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. His honors and awards include Silver Wiener Award for the Boy Scouts of America, Ebony Magazine's 100 Leaders of the Future, Birmingham Emancipation Association Education Award, Birmingham News, 100 Leaders of the Next Generation. I bring to you tonight our special speaker again, Mr. Otis Dismuke.
Tonight to share this occasion with you. When Kanzetta called,
I'm usually told the years in between dates you got everything together. You're true, no? Was that last year? Oh no, this days ago? This year. Derek and I saw each other 2 weeks ago. I saw Tori the day before yesterday, and he said, now we count on you. I said, I'm going to be there. I don't know who has more school spirit between Derek and Kanzetta, because it's really contagious. And when you get Derek out, it's really like having Cedric the Entertainer. 2 and 3 times all over again. I really have, I was teasing Kanzetta when Danielle was not here on time. I said, well, that's how she is in church. She's going to make it before the sermon is over with. And I just look toward the door and I know I can see. I have enjoyed seeing you come in and mix and mingle with one another. I talked to some of the guys earlier, and they told me how everything went last night. The picnic today, I understand, was super and off the chain. And tonight, the dance is going to be equally so. Remember now, you are 36, 37, and 38 years old. You can't do what you used to do. So go slow with the DJ now. Go slow with it. Just a few minutes because, again, I have enjoyed just watching you come in and mix and mingle. I went to West End High School in 1982. I was 20 years old, and I had to wait a year before they gave me my teaching certificate, because you could not teach until you were 21 years old. One lady who was very influential in our family and in my life called the Board of Education and told Dr. Cantaloupe that there was this young man who needed a job, but that he was only 20 years old. So they allowed me to work first at Howell downtown, and then I worked at Center Street, and then I was sent to West End. I stayed at West End 16 and a half years, from 1982 to June of 1988. And West End was one of the best experiences of my career. So much so because as the community grew and as the young people came, as I was leaving, the younger brothers and sisters of the ones whom I had started with were coming at that particular time. I was sharing with an alumnus of West End, Ira Jackson, on yesterday, and he and Tori worked together very closely, that it started to change in 1993, 94, and by 95, it had completely changed. I was invited back 2 years ago by the head of the history department to do a Black History talk, and it's a whole new West End. I could not believe that I had been there that long, and now we don't even know the place. Only 3 faculty members remain out of the 102 that you knew when you were there. There are 18 that are deceased, and I'm going to go through those very quickly. Mr. Charles Akon, as you know, passed. Miss Sylvia Murray, Coach Ray Williams, Reverend Jackson, Miss Janola Grayson, who taught math, Miss Zander, who taught Latin, Miss Edna Wallace, Chief, yes, Chief passed. Coach Rara Scott, Miss Willie Sample, who died last year, Mr. Taylor Green, Miss Edith Shipp, our lunchroom manager, and all of the others are retired and doing very well. Someone asked me not too long ago, and of course you know Miss Rakestraw passed. They asked me if Miss Rakestraw had lived, how old would she be? And I said she would probably be about 250. And those were just tidbits. And I know, and I could tell from your reaction that you were shocked at the deaths of some of those, particularly Mr. Green, Ms. Wallace, and others, who gave of their all to make the school what it was. West End is a special place. And what I liked about the fact is that Larry shared with me the plans that he, Kanzetta, and all of you on the planning committee pulled together. Right, and what I like is the fact that you kept some things in West End where they ought and should have been. It's easy when you get to a certain station in life to go to Hoover or go elsewhere, but you didn't graduate from Hoover High School. You didn't live in Hoover. And the reunions, as I've told some other classes, and I have to remind folk all the time, and I hope you take it in the right perspective. But if you don't, I feel sorry for you. But maturity ought to bring you to a station in life where you could. Reunions are not about driving up in cars and bling bling and flashing this and flashing that and talking about what job you have. Because whether you know it or not, your job can be gone tomorrow. That job you have at South Central Bell, at the post office, or wherever you think you are, it can be gone. You may think you have the picture of health, but you don't know what's swimming around in your body right now. And it only takes one bump on the head, and everything you thought you knew will be gone. And somebody will be feeding you. Don't get caught up in the who's who and the what's what. But thank God for 20 years that he has kept you. He has allowed you to come back, to mix and mingle with your classmates, to share experiences that you enjoyed over a period of time, to gather addresses and phone numbers, and to keep in touch. Now, in the next 20 years, some of you may not be here. It is not promised. And that's why you ought not wait 20 years to do this over again. All right. You need to get together more often. Whether it's a basketball game, or whether it's a Christmas social, or whatever, but get together often. Because it is not promised. The 7 candles that you've lit tonight in honor of your classmates, they were individuals who walked among you, who shared with you, who went through 4 years and sometimes 8 years with elementary school between Jackson and Lee and other schools in West End, and they are no longer here. And perhaps if you had asked some of those folk 10 years ago, what do you want to be doing, or what would you be doing, or think you would be doing, they would have had plans rattling off. But I'm here to tell you, it's not promised. I applaud Sharon, who came forward, and I keep up with those of you from time to time, whether you know it or not. And there at her church, at True Love in Ensley, she is a blessing. And no, you ought not complain, because you have too much to be thankful for. And when you think about some folk who left too early, made plans of homes and families, but to be cut off by circumstance, then you know you don't have the time that you think you have. Some folk at other reunions I've been to, they've been so flighty, in quotes. And what by flighty, I mean they are so uphill that nobody can reach them. And they think that they are God's gift to somebody, only to find out later on, who cares about your house? The only thing you're doing is helping to pay bills and mobiles and join the crowd, because everybody's in that line. And when you hear, or if you happen to hear, some of your fellow classmates say, well, I don't have to work. They a lie. Nobody gets up at 7:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning to prepare to go anywhere to punch nobody's clock, and they don't have to do it. You'd be without a house. They can easily pull a car in. So when you hear those lies, don't pay that any attention. And then when they get all caught up in themselves, just remind them, I knew you when. And Derek put the icing on the cake tonight by saying, we all went down that way. Starched jeans, who could afford it? But some couldn't. But now you ought to be thankful that you can. And very briefly, when you get an opportunity, read the 66th chapter of Genesis, and it ends there. But it starts in the 34th chapter. And it is a story of a young man whose name was Joseph. And Joseph was the prize of his father. His father made over him more than anybody else. And his brothers became jealous of him, like folk tend to do. And his brothers plotted to do away with him. Now you wouldn't think that folk in your own family would do something like that, but folk in his family did. And Joseph's brothers not only plotted, but they in a way succeeded, because they told his dad that something bad had happened to him, never to return again. 17 years passed, and there was a famine in the land, a drought. Folk suffered for hunger and water. And Joseph here in prison, the Bible said the Lord's hand was on Joseph. And I want to let you know, when folk think they have the upper hand on you, you don't have to do anything but wait on time, because it takes care of everything. I have seen folk who try to maneuver their way and pull dirty and low-down tricks to get somebody else out of a job to get promoted, only to get there to have the rug pulled from under them themselves. And the only thing you have to do is wait on time. And my dad always told me that when folk throw mud on you, don't try to get it off yourself, because if you try to get it off, you'll mess up the suit. If you let it dry up, it'll fall off. when folk who think they've arrived try to do dirty and devious things to you, hold your peace and let the Lord fight your battle. And I want to say to you tonight, I am proud of you. I am proud of the accomplishments you've made in home and in family and job. But I challenge you, one thing that I'm most proud of is that if you know Jesus, you know the right one. And you're going to leave here one day. And you're not going to stay here often. I don't care how good you think you look. I don't care how much Lady Clairol, how much weave you put in. But time is going to come to render your body helpless. And don't leave here without having a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you don't know how to pray, now's a good time to find out. Because before this life is over with, you're going to go through enough challenging trials to find out what prayer is all about. Everybody think that they are happy when the crowd is around. But wait until the door slams and those empty walls face you. And the significant others that you think were important to build you up, only to have you torn down later on. Later on, Joseph endured lies being told on him. And folk will tell lies on you when they can't think of nothing else to tell. They'll make up stuff. But you don't have to defend yourself. You know you. And what you did 20 years ago don't define who you are now. Some folk haven't grown at all in 20 years. Still playing childish games and tricks. You know, if you were a playboy 20 years ago, the Mac Daddy game won't work now. You should have matured now. Some foolish habits that you developed 20 years ago, you ought to be done with that now. It ought to be a new page in your life. And you ought to be glad to turn that new page. A lot of folk remember things, but guess what? It is not only in remembering, but it is in forgiving too. Well, I don't want to participate in the class reunion because of that. No doubt. Get over it. Get over it. Somebody said something to you at the gas station 15 years ago and you hadn't forgotten it yet. That's foolish. And that's childish. Well, who's coming? I want to know who's coming. What difference does it make? As long as you show up. Well, how much is it going to be? You pay for everything else you want. You throw away money on CDs that you only play one time or when company comes over. Don't dwell on the negative. And I want to tell you, the members of the planning committee, you've done a wonderful job. And as I close, don't leave tonight after your picture and after the dance and after your church service on tomorrow and as you exchange emails and other things without thanking them for going above the call of duty. When you come back, though the high school, they're debating now about building a high school, and fortunately for some, West End is going to be there for another couple of years. But whether the school itself is ever there or not, you are West End. It's in your heart that you shared those 4 years. And yes, some memories were not pleasant, but yet others were. And be thankful you had challenging teachers and other folk who were in your life who helped to make you who you are. and the generation that I see now, that I encounter, young men who don't know what work is all about.
Talk, Doc.
Because they don't have parents who get up every morning and go to work. Young ladies who don't see other women go to work. And now a whole generation coming along who won't experience what you had, that will be short-lived. And thank God for the experiences that you've had. Every instructor I called and some I didn't call. Barbara Chapman. I can see you now scurrying at the last minute trying to get those notes together. That video call. Miss Wallace trying to sew in that zipper. Because she's trying to thread you. Allison running Bruce up and down the hall. And he's outside the door. I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna come in. And nobody can imitate, I don't think, Akon better than Derek. Yeah, pulling up his pants, blowing his whistle through his hands. Boy, go down there and get it, and then putting that bowl on you too. That's what some of this generation need, a good bowl of education. Be thankful for the time that you are together.
Yes, sir.
And the experiences that you've shared. Now what happened to Joseph? Joseph's brothers saw him, but they didn't know who he was because 17 years had passed. And when they came to get something to eat, he fed them, but they didn't know who he was. And Joseph could have been arrogant and said, I'm your brother, and I'm the so-and-so y'all sold, and look at me now. He said, come and eat. What I have, you have. And he spoke those immortal words that you've heard, but perhaps you didn't know where they came from. And it came from that story. He said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. I don't ever worry about folk who pray against me. Do you know why? Because the Bible said the Lord's ears are open to the prayers of the righteous. Meaning that if you are not sincere, he's not going to hear you no way. And if you don't mean nobody well, he's not going to hear you anyway. But if you have the inkling of being sincere, and if you desire your fellow man, your brother or sister, your fellow classmate to have good success, like the back of your program says, that we wish you well as we depart and that God will be with you, then let them know, I really wish you well. Stay in touch. One of my favorite poems, my hair may be nappy, my skin may be black, but I'll let nothing throw me off this track. I'm going to keep on climbing, round by round, until my feet strike higher ground. And when I do, remember what I say. I'm determined to be somebody someday. You are somebody this day because you are young, gifted, and black. And that's where it's at. God has a plan for you. He has a purpose for you. And he has a provision for you. Accept your plan. Know your provision. And don't be afraid to walk in your calling. Some folks say you'll never be nobody. That's a lie. Some folks say it's where you live that makes a difference. That's a lie too. Because where you live doesn't have to live in you. Folk have lived in the alley, but the alley didn't live in them. Folk have come from the project, but they were better than the project. God will take you and give you as far as you can see. The only thing you've got to do is ask him. And if you ask him, he'll help you. You may not know how, but just say, Lord, I want some help. And before you know it, he'll come quicker than quick and faster than fast. I wish you well. The best is yet to come. Nothing to it but to do it.